everybody. Welcome to 2023 and the first Spoilerin time of the year. This show is all about the shows we watch after we figure out where they are, what service, what device to use. That's all stuff we talk about on Cordkillers, our other show. Here, we watch the shows and we talk about them with each other, exploring new and fun things to watch. This week, we'll be talking about Miami Vice, Season 3, Episode 23. We've been doing a rewatch or a retro watch of Miami Vice based on the special guest appearances. Episode 323 is Everybody's in Showbiz with a appearance by Benicio del Toro. We're also watching the Korean show 2521 on Netflix, and we watched the movie 12 Angry Men. I'm Tom Merritt. He's Brian Brushwood.
Hey, man, I don't know about you. I'm ready to Hulk out.
In 12 different ways?
Yes? Question mark?
You both can't be confused. That's not how that bit works.
Are we both talking about 12 Angry Men?
I'm going to recommend some improv books to you guys.
Yes, and let's talk about 12 Angry Men. Yeah, we watched the original, the 1957 version, which I last watched a couple of years ago when the show I used to do with Scott Current Geek would do a monthly film fest episode. And we were watching some of the greatest films of all time, 12 Angry Men, on many lists among, the top films of all time. It has been remade many times over the years, but this is the quintessential film version of it, although it was a play that was turned into a film, and it's kind of shot like a play too.
Well, as a matter of fact, as we dive in, that was one of the first things that struck me. First of all, am I getting it right? Is it Frank Capra, the director, the guy who did It's a Wonderful Life? I don't know if that's right or not.
Frank Capra did It's a Wonderful Life, correct?
Okay, but I don't know.
This was Sidney Lumet.
Okay, sorry. So
Sidney
it's a different
Lumet
director.
did 12 Angry Men. Yeah.
But what was fascinating is I sort of keyed in to the fact that after the establishing shots, there's like a 20-minute unbroken shot. And I remember thinking, this is remarkable. And then I realized also fairly easy when it's staged and performed as a play. And,
Right.
and then I
You're
dialed
in
back
one
my
room.
enthusiasm.
Yeah. Well, I think it's still, I know that Hitchcock did that with Rope, where he did like the whole movie as a single shot. Basically, and that it was kind of a gimmick. So it's still a technical marvel.
And
I liked how that opening kind of shows you the setting without having to tell you anything. There's a person in a rush. There's a person very down on their luck. There's a person very excited right next to the person down on their luck. And it's like, yes, we're taking you through this is what a courthouse is like. I thought that was very nicely done.
Mm-hmm.
Bryce, was this your first time seeing it?
It was. I've seen all of the references and pop culture to it, but I had not seen the original text. I really dug this. I thought,
oh, good.
It does a great job with pacing, with a lot of high tension energy, and none of it feels fantastical. It kind of has this almost fairy tale like setup, right? The sleepy judge who kind of, this is just his everyday thing. You got the kid, you've got all of the different forces inside the jury room, and this is just another day in the courthouse. So I think it's really interesting, and I think holds up really well. Also very quick, very speedy.
That's part of the reason I suggested it, is because I remembered it being very quick.
Yeah. Now, we were talking about the technical stuff earlier. A fun fact that I learned while looking this up was even though this is presented much like a play and based off of a play, I guess because of the way lighting was at the time, and you've seen that there's some shots where it's very dramatic lighting for like one shot. Apparently, they had to shoot this movie way, way out of order because of those lighting setups. So the fact that this comes across so effortlessly, going between these long shots and then very specific close-ups, I think is also a testament to filmmaking in 1957. I think that's really, really well planned and really well put together.
I'll confess, Bryce, the last time I watched it was a couple years ago with my daughter, and it was novel for me to see it for the first time since a kid, and I thought it was pretty good. But this time, watching it again, I had a more skeptical eye, and I was like, I wonder if Bryce is going to be annoyed by how totally obvious it is from the very get-go, but I'm pleased that you got swept up in the slow, like, of course, you're not surprised by the fact that in the end, everybody turns around, but you do get that satisfying, what is the reason that each domino falls?
Yeah.
And I thought they did a good job with that.
And all of that holds up really well, I think, even to the last juror, and I think even his story is very cyclical, right? We start at the beginning with him. He's looking at the photo, and you think, oh, he's defensive of the father because, well, nobody would want to be killed by their son. And then at the end, he wouldn't want to be killed by his son. He wouldn't want to think his son could kill him. And none of that is spoken. Like, it's all just within the acting. It's really fantastic. Tom, what did you think?
I'm always struck every time I've watched this about the rhetorical sweep of it. Even though I know how it ends now, right? I've seen it. And even if the first time you watch it, you kind of are like, oh, I guess I know how this ends. Otherwise it wouldn't make a very good movie. But they earn it. Even though you know how it's going to end, they earn it. They make it look like, well, there's no way they could possibly have a believable method in which these people change their minds. And they take the whole movie to do it. It's a very texty movie, but they convince you. They show you where every person turns. You're like, oh yeah, I could see why that person would turn. And it's such a great demonstration of the malleability of argument and things that and I think in this day and age the lesson for online discussion is people who say things that are very definitive may look like they'll never change their mind, but you'll be surprised what will change their mind. It's not what you think.
Well, and it's also kind of a masterpiece in unfolding storytelling where we don't get to know what was said in the courtroom and we don't know what happened at the scene of the crime. And so for everything they unpack and then they have a discussion about, then they unpack another thing. And of course, like all good narratives, there was something previously that they go back to that all of a sudden makes sense in a new context, up to and including, like they mentioned, the fact that the murder was witnessed by the old lady, and then the aging, trying to look young lady, and then they get to the point where I guess it was. It is a bit out of context or out of step with time to go back almost 70 years when it was not cool to wear glasses or whatever, and people are like, those divots on your face, what is that? And they were like, that's what glasses do to them. That lady had those things.
Although you wouldn't have to make too many tweaks to turn that into a modern story of people still like, oh, she was a little vain and didn't think her glasses made her look good, so she took them off. Like that's believable. I could see somebody doing that. They would have put it in context. That's I think
right,
that's
but it was very clear that they presented it as though having somebody with glasses was rare enough that people were like, so that's what faces look like when the glasses come off.
I also really like in this movie, I really like the different kinds of arguments. So you can dismiss juror 10. That's Ed Begley Sr., by the way, because he's just like he's just a loudmouth. He's kind of racist maybe or classist. You can't really tell. That's the other thing this movie does really well, is that it obfuscates the prejudices enough that they can sort of work for anything, and you don't get lost going down that rabbit hole. But then you have juror 4. Juror 4 is my favorite because he is the alter ego to our hero, juror 8,
Fonda.
and that he's being very rational. He's like, rationally speaking, I don't think you can find him not guilty. I think you have to find him guilty, and I'm being very rational to the end. And it takes them pointing out a last piece of the evidence that didn't fit for even juror 4 to immediately stay true to character and go, well, I was wrong about that. So now not guilty because I now have reasonable doubt.
Well, and you have some characters that are, is supplicant a word for somebody who, basically just kind of goes with the flow, or?
Oh yeah. You have the baseball fan who's like, I just want to get out of here. Fine. If the tide's turning against me, I'll vote with the majority.
Yeah. That meltdown of when the dude basically outs himself as racist, classist, prejudice, whatever. And as he's going on without ever mentioning any specifics, like this kid could have been Irish, Hispanic, Jewish, you name it. But then one by one, people get up and turn their backs to him. And it's this very primal, in a primate kind of way, where nobody can handle being exiled from the entire tribe. And yet this guy went so far afield, he just melts down. And he's like, I'll do whatever. I lose.
And no one talks to him. No one has a response to it. No one responds to it. They're like, it's fascinating. It is the most charged moment of the movie, and no one fights it. It is so ridiculous, seemingly, that no one will fight.
Even the blowhard who's in love with his son or estranged from his son, even he turns his back. It's great.
Yeah. It's a great demonstration, and granted, it's a movie, but it's a great demonstration about how sometimes the most effective arguments are not fighting the argument, not shouting, and silence can speak volumes. I also love Jack Klugman, the most recognizable member of this movie, next to Henry Fonda, of course. At least for people at my age who remember him from The Odd Couple. Jack Klugman is the guy from The Poor Neighborhood, one of the best dressed guys in the room, and I love that, where it's like, yeah, you can't judge people by their appearances. He has Juror 5 has a history that the others wouldn't have guessed about.
Well, and also he wears it in a way so far above the station he was born into, or the level, the class that he's currently assigned. There's an upward mobility to him, and a humility and an honesty that really rings through. A few things that were out of step with our time that I noticed is, and again, back in the day, I mean, among many, but just the casual way the dude is coughing and sneezing on the other jurors. They were like, got a cold, do you? He's like, sure do. I'm definitely ill. Ha ha ha. Coughing all over you.
Last time I watched it, I thought, that guy's kind of rude. This time I watched it, I'm like, that guy's going to kill this entire game.
Yeah, right? And it's like, back in those days, it's like, well, what can you do?
I mean, back in those days when I watched it 4 years ago or whatever it was, I had an entirely different reaction. Yeah, it's crazy.
On top of that was the casual comfort with sweating, because antiperspirants, I don't think really were on the rise till the late 70s, early 80s or whatever.
Well, and no climate control. That's the other thing, right? The fan was all you had. There's no air conditioning. There's no central air in this thing.
Yeah, and all that sweat, I don't think they had people spritzing them. I think that those were hot lights, and that was authentic sweat.
Could be.
Now, you know what? Also,
it's such a good cross section of personality types. I'm sorry, Bryce. Go ahead.
Well, just in terms of thinking about things that maybe don't hold up anymore, generating evidence and arguments out of nowhere, probably not.
No. The one part of this that is absolutely unbelievable to me is that Henry Fonda, Juror 8, went out and bought a knife just like the one that was used in the crime. That is explicitly against jury instructions, and was then too. You cannot, as a juror, go conduct your own independent research.
Yeah, but that was a good moment, though.
It was a great moment. It was worth it. It was worth it for the moment. Yeah.
Well, and also this is hearkening back to the classic days of murder mysteries where you didn't worry about forensics. This would have been pre-forensics time.
They're just grabbing that knife. They talked about dusting it for fingerprints, but they're like, yeah, they got the fingerprints off of it. We don't need to protect it anymore.
Well, or any.
They just gave it. They just gave it. They didn't even put it in a bag.
Yeah,
they just here.
And they're also like walking around with 2 knives and brandishing it at each other, and
and no recorded media of the event whatsoever. Everything is eyewitness testimony, and of course nowadays this would have been literally before the memory research had proven how unreliable eyewitness testimony was.
Sure.
But in this time, they had to accept everything as ironclad and work within those rules. So I'm willing to, look the other way on that part.
You have reasonable doubt.
Well, and I thought that was an interesting part of Juror 8, where it's like, even not having that as a precedent, he was able to tease out the idea that, a witness can be unreliable. A witness may think they're telling the truth and not be telling the truth. They may be fooling themselves, like the old man who said he heard a body, and maybe just kind of, again, I liked that they didn't just say like, oh, he was just looking for attention. It was like, he needs attention, and he may fool himself into thinking he heard something he didn't, without it being like a base, fully conscious of his lie.
Well, and again, during this time, that would have been, maybe something people suspected by folk knowledge, but virtually no science to back it up because the research hadn't been done yet.
I'll be honest. I sat down to watch this thinking like, well, I've seen it before. I'll forgive myself if my mind drifts a little. I know what happens. totally was enthralled again. Watched every second.
Same.
Stopped once for an unavoidable reason and went right back into it.
100% the same. And Bryce, I'm so thrilled that it held up and that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, I really dug it. It was more noir than I thought it would be, because I guess it is a sort of it is a bottle movie, but between the lighting and the script, they really have a hard-boiled story here. It's great.
Yeah. One other personal side note, I don't know if this will mean anything to anyone else but me, but the old man, Juror 9, Joseph Sweeney, 2 years younger than my grandpa.
Wow. Wait.
Wow.
My grandpa was 2 years older than that guy.
Wow.
Oh my goodness. See, history's not that long ago. History's not that long ago, Brian.
What? There were jurors back in the olden times?
We had 12 jurors back in the day.
Before inflation.
We had to go uphill both ways to deliberate.
Yeah, because they hadn't invented downhill yet.
That's right. Tom, please end this bit.
No, I'm just going to let it linger on and on and on. All right, that is the movie 12 Angry Men. Let's talk about another number. 2521, episode 8. I'll be honest, I sent Brian and Bryce a guide to parts they could fast forward through. I'm curious if either of you actually did anything with that.
Tom, I want you to know that I was almost prepared to tap out. Today was the day that I was like, okay, I'm either going to carve out an hour and change to watch this, or I know I have permission to stop at any time. And then I was like, didn't Tom give me a skip guide? And I looked, and you provided a generous number of skips.
A lot of big skips.
And I was like, wow, Tom's really putting forth the effort. I'll give it a try. And then I got to the end, and I understood why Tom is like, if there's ever a moment, I'm going to put forth all the effort to keep them on the hook. This is going to be it, because we finally have that moment with the Three's Company theme starts playing, and boy, is it going to be awkward.
Yeah. And we are in a part of the show that now they're watching it. I'm sort of remembering that I felt like the show gets slow. And I know it's already pacing wise, it's considered slow, but I remember wondering if this story was worth it myself at certain times. And so that's why I was like, you know what, there's good stuff in here. If I can help you see the good stuff, I will do that. Especially because there's a lot of stuff here where, I think because these are made for broadcast, they still do a lot of like, you're going to have this on in the background. So we'll make it easy to follow. And doing that exercise this time really helped me go like, oh yeah, the coach and the mom stuff, you totally get that from context later. You don't need to see that again. The stuff where you see the bread with the stickers and outside the convenience store, they're just reaffirming the friendship of these two. You guys know that. You don't need to spend a lot of time on that. So yeah, I thought I would get you to the points that are really interesting. I still feel like this story is better than most stories, certainly unique in Korean drama stories, but you have to watch the whole things, which is why I'm pulling out the stops to help you along the way. And that Three's Company moment is a fun one. It's not even the reason I love this, but I'm glad that you enjoyed that.
Bryce, before I yield the floor to you, did you have the same moment I had? Because it's been a few weeks since we've watched it, but I was like, wait, I thought they figured out that they're talking to each other on the chat room. And then I remembered, oh, no, wait. We figured out that it's the two of them. They hadn't figured it out yet.
Yeah, I didn't quite have that hang up. I did think that the ending was dookie. I did think that was so weird. You know what? It reminded me a lot of how the previous episode ended, where I watched that. That's what was the big cliffhanger at the end of that was I don't even remember now. But the referee with all the referee stuff.
Right.
And then they listen to the tape and they hear about Becky Jean liking the other girl.
Right,
that was
right,
it.
right.
And I hated that because I was like, that's stupid. Please don't make us waste time on something really kind of stupid about that. And I kind of feel that way about the end of this, where it's like, are we gonna do this? Is very Three's Company. are we doing the whole song and dance, or is this going to be like, because it would be very, I don't know, it's very stupid what they're setting up, that he's just going to go along with this, I feel like.
Well,
Brian, obviously Tom knows what's going on, but Brian, how do you feel about that?
I don't mind it. At least we got to the part that we all smelled coming. And but to me, the standout part of this was the fact that in the multiple triangle quadrangle equation, you have Eugene working for Hito's mom, and he gets dressed down for, it's like, you hit your mark, you say your line, you're a GD professional. What are you doing here? That was some interesting power dynamics, especially, I don't know, I dug that a lot. And part of me wanted to roll my eyes. It's like, just reboot the computer, call back. But of course, part of the story is that he's young and in his early, 20s, so he doesn't have the faculties to do anything but want to hide under a bedsheet after he embarrasses himself on national television. Right. I dug all of that, and it's strained. I ended up with it for all that.
And I did like that we even got her saying later, like, he did a good job of
owning it.
Of owning it. Yeah, he's not like he was just stammering or stuttering. I mean, he screwed up.
It was better for him to hang up than to stammer. It would have been better if he didn't do either and just did his job, right? Yeah. Is like, oh, okay, yeah, that's real.
Yeah. Know the story and be able to speak extemporaneously about it. If not, if you don't have the details in front of you, you can at least talk about the high end of the picture.
Yeah. I will say, Tom, I really appreciated your skip guide. There were not very many moments where I hit the timer and realized I had missed a skip, or I had watched too much, but I think that helped me a very lot.
I would like to subscribe to this service.
Can I subscribe to your Patreon, Tom?
Patreon.com/skipguide. I'm glad that worked. It helped me kind of wrap my head around what are the important parts of these episodes too. The fact that Koyurim comes from a family that's not as advantaged as Hito. And so it's her talent that's bringing her forward. And when that gets undermined, it depresses her. And you see that moment where she's on the dive platform, not so dramatic as really, trying to hurt herself, but
just wanting to do something to shake herself out of her own funk.
Wanting to feel something kind of situation. You get a little more about the coach and the mom and the coach, warning about Eugene.
Don't trust reporters. Trust me.
Yep. Yeah, like your mom. Yeah.
I do like the fact that finally we have in the real world, we have Koyurim and Hito both on the outs. Like, they're both low status at this point. And you would think that this would be the moment that they would actually come together, but instead we get, come and knock on our door.
Well, and what's interesting now is, what is interesting about that is Koyurim knows, but Hito does not. And you don't know what Becky Jin is going to do until next week. All I'll say is, I hope you guys looked at the revelation from the cassette and then looked at this episode and was like, oh, okay, that wasn't nearly as they didn't do as many bad things with it as maybe they could have.
I guess really those 2 points that I'm talking about are an entire episode apart from each other. So whatever's happening is not a super long grocery bill to deal with, for sure.
Yeah. And when we get to see Hito's reaction, it's more like, I'm annoyed with you because you sound like you're a player, which, there's multiple levels why that bothers her, but it's not a, I don't know. It's not as cheesy as it could have been, I guess.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on 25-21?
No, you keep us with the Cliff Notes guide, and I think we'll show up for next week.
All right, it's a deal. Let's talk about Miami Vice season 3, episode 23. Everybody's in Showbiz. We were brought to this because Benicio del Toro is listed as a guest. And I was a little worried at one point that he wasn't going to have any lines. He does at least have a couple. But yeah, that is very, very early in Benicio del Toro's career.
So this particular episode, I did notice, was one of the lower rated. I mean, it's still generally like 6.8 out of 10, but it's one of the lower rated of the season, and I understand why. But especially given that opening scene, is so bizarre and over the top. And the guy's walking like the Hamburglar, looking left to right or whatever. And I hated it. I went in with extreme prejudice, but by the midway point, you realize that whatever this engine is that causes this guy to be stupidly over dramatic with things I mean, he's touched. The guy's not right. I've known characters like this, and he weirdly became more believable to me, even up to the "my soul is an oatmeal" line or whatever.
Oatmeal! And then he
slog through oatmeal. Yeah.
Like I kind of believed him more and more as a crazy, unhinged junkie the entire time.
I kept going back and forth between this is really like 70s theater overacting in a late 80s TV show, and actually I think this guy's really talented, and maybe too talented for this part. I couldn't decide.
Well, he definitely committed 100% to the detriment of the cool guy acting of everyone else on Miami Vice. Boy, did he stand out.
Yeah, it was, I want to say, bad directing, not bad acting. That the director didn't channel him into the right boundaries. I could be wrong about that, but that's kind of my impression, is that he was really talented. He was not given the proper direction for this.
It feels like the things that made me feel weird about this episode made me feel weird about the whole script of the episode. That made me think, oh, maybe they're doing it thematically to zhuzh up the drama of this, but it was very, very hokey. Just some of
it was all over the place too.
Let me double down on Tom's hypothesis, because I think the direction is the fault. Because if you're gonna have a play stage on the show, then maybe your quote unquote actual places should look in any way different from the lighting and the setup of that play stage. Like, he says, "I'm going to go sneak out," opens up the window on what definitely is a play stage set, and sneaks out, and then cuts to an exterior shot. I mean, it really took me out of it.
And also the tiny office corner with the whole copy machine. What a plot device. Oh yeah, that's just our copy machine.
I mean, not for nothing, but it got me. Well, it's like they mentioned the copier. I was like, oh, it's the 80s. That would be novel to have a copier at the time.
We all know he makes copies of everything. We do?
Yeah.
But then he takes the paper out. He doesn't indicate how much of the paper he's taking. I don't know. They do a very weird thing of how they phrase that, where they make it seem like, oh, he copies everything, but he hasn't copied this one yet.
Oh, hold on. Let's go all the way back to the beginning, where we get the classic joke shop proprietor tropes, where he's the guy does one gag, does a second gag, and then says, "Here, come here, lean in," and then he says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to do anything." I'm like, okay, here it comes. Cut scene.
Smash cut.
Like, what was the point of that? It was just awkward and weird.
Yeah. I think that is emblematic of the entire episode, again, where it's like, Charles Keating, great character actor. If you take every line out of context, very believable and delivered well, but the entire sequence was just odd.
Is that the magic shop guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun though. Man, I don't know who's writing for the show or what set director. Like, this is the second time we've seen magic awkwardly wedged in to Miami Vice. The first time was he was reading a book, 100 Tricks to Do with a Thumb Tip or whatever. Like, it was bonkers.
Yeah. This is a story by Reynaldo Pavode, and the writers are Anthony Yerkovich and David J. Burke. I do not know Reynaldo Pavode. This is the only credit they have on IMDb.
I thought I saw Dick Wolf in the intro credits.
Possibly as well. Yeah, I'm just looking at the first two on IMDb. But the story by usually is somebody's like, "Hey, I've got an idea for a story." Star Trek would do this all the time, where they'd be like, "Great, we're going to take that and turn it into a teleplay. We'll give you a story by credit, but the screenplay writers who know TV will write it up." And this may be one of those situations where it was a really compelling story. I think there's some really interesting aspects of this story. It just didn't get converted well.
Just one funny bit.
Okay.
One funny bit. Was when the actor guy is doing his monologue, but the Jan Hammer music is super loud and disco-y over this deaf poetry. It's the most chaotic thing that's been on my TV in a long time. Just
also, shouts out to, remember when Dustbusters were novel? And then you had to wedge one into the script?
Pull out the Buster.
But not actually show one? They didn't even show it. They just implied from context that must be that Dustbuster from Black & Decker.
We're modern enough that they're worried about product placement, right? But we're not so modern that a Dustbuster is not unique. Yeah. Side note: do you all call that a Dustbuster even if it's not a Dustbuster?
Yes, nobody calls it a buster.
The handheld, if it's got the handle.
Vacuum. No,
if it's handed or handle. Like Weed Whacker.
That's Kleenex,
stuff,
right?
Weed Whacker stuff too, which is the brand name.
Right. It's
what did you guys call it?
survived.
I mean, we were all very enamored of the Dustbuster.
I always call it a Dustbuster. I didn't know if that was just archaic, or if that has survived.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess now
hand vac.
I think the in thing would be the Dyson, because now you don't have to bend over to do it.
I guess you don't take out the
vacuum.
Dyson. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. I half hated, half loved this episode, and I don't know why.
I'm right there with you.
Like Switek coming out and just doing the hammy Elvis thing, and then we like, I'll show you Elvis, and then it's Elvis crying over his dead mother.
Yeah, it's like Elvis's pain. Yeah, it's from 0 to 60 for sure.
Also, hell of a job turning the place upside down with that search warrant, boys. they just walk around, they look under the stage, they're like, I don't know, I guess we're gonna need a strike team.
Yeah.
And then something maybe I missed it. I didn't have the subtitles up, but the key thing that they find is an award.
Yeah, it just says Best Drama Desk Award or something.
Well, that was the other thing I had a hard time catching up on, is like, you are such a talent. He had everything. I'm like, what? Did he? Did we ever see that? Or did they just say that a couple of times that I almost missed? That he was really
they definitely
successful?
said, boy, you sure are a screw up. You were making $20 or $20,000 a month. He's like, well, now I make $20,000 a night. Thanks to drugs. It's great.
Which one was Benicio del Toro?
He was the brother.
The bald one?
No. That was his
the other one.
Co-conspirator. The guy who just
the kind of dorky brother who was like,
the guy who just paced back and forth and just went, oh my God, I'm so worried. My hands
are
in the air.
turquoise blue shirt.
No,
my brother, they're gonna keep him forever this time.
I was eating some oatmeal at the time, so I might have.
You were slogging through oatmeal.
And again, here's the switch flipping again. I kind of dug that it's clear that that our guys dig the poetry, the writing of this dude. I mean,
they digged it more
even
than
if it's hammy as we consume it, it's clear that the characters respect it.
Right, and Crockett even does a passable job of delivering some lines, right?
Yeah.
Again, I guess that's supposed to show us that this guy is well known, that Crockett even knows the lines, right?
Well, no, I got the impression from the beginning that Crockett had an idea who the guy was, even as the crime was occurring. I think they had a history, is what it really was.
Well, and he played this character in other episodes of Miami Vice. Obviously, this is the first time.
Okay. I was like, hey, that seems like a good recurring character. It seems like you got some stuff there.
He was. Well, he played this character a couple times, according to what I saw. He also played a character named Snake, which I don't know is the same character or not, but he at one point said, I feel like I got snakes in my head. And I was like, Is that some kind of like
Is that a wink?
reference to the fact that he played another character called Snake on Miami Vice?
Hey, don't take a Jan Hammer to my head about it.
You know what? Shouts out too for like when he gets stabbed. I'm like, oh yes, that's right. TV rules. He's dead immediately upon being stabbed, and it's like too bad they can't be realistic. And then smash cut to barely covering boobs bikinis saying, hey, look at that guy. He's still alive.
He doesn't show up again, does he?
Because they find him in the boat, like he crawled up on the boat, and then they take him to the hospital. And by the way, his death ambiguous. He escaped and made sure to steal some drugs on his way out. So who knows?
He couldn't have possibly got very far in the condition he was in, Brian.
I mean, that definitely sounds like...
said balding doctor.
He didn't even have any money. Very good wackety button at the end of it.
Oh, by the way, if you watch that scene, whoever they hired to be the security or the cop in dress uniform was very unclear about what he was supposed to do. Talk about bad direction. He couldn't decide if he was kind of watching Crockett and Tubbs or just looking forward, not caring. It was amazing.
Yeah, so he was only in 2 episodes of Miami Vice. I guess Mikey was not a recurring character, just he played Snake before. So that must have been a reference to his other character. All right, folks, that is Miami Vice Season 3, Episode 23, Everybody's in Showbiz. We will be skipping ahead with our Miami Vice watch. Yes, there is an episode with Stanley Tucci, but we are going to skip past that to Episode 2 of Season 4, Amen, Send Money, with Ben Stiller as our guest.
What was he, 12? How old is Ben Stiller?
I don't know. But yeah, we'll find out when we watch Amen, Send Money. We'll also be watching 2521 Season 1, Episode 9. And The Last of Us is coming to HBO Max this Sunday. So watch it along with us. We will be talking about The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 1 next week. Thanks, everybody, for supporting us. Again, you get these episodes early and you get them packaged up differently if you're a patron, patreon.com/Cordkillers. And of course, After Talk, where we will be spoiling Glass Onion. Go check that out as well if you are a patron. Until next time, everybody, we'll spoil you then.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.